we're back again. It's Atlanta Discuss. This is our third episode this year, and like I told you, we're going to looking at so many things. We know we blame everything in Africa on government leadership, but there's also a followership approach. I know everybody has a role to play, but then where are our religious leaders? Where are our traditional leaders? Where are citizen A, citizen B? You know, I mean, like I said in the last episode, any teacher that gives special marks to a child because the parents reward him or her is part of the problem. If you're a policeman and you're selling bullets to armed robbers, you're part of the problem. If you're a traditional ruler, who was elected by Ifa, to be level-headed and be true to your people, and you say calm down every time the governor or the local government chairman is misappropriating funds because you're a direct beneficiary, you are part of the problem. If you're a general overseer somewhere, there are same visions that are inimical to the growth of the nation because you're also a direct beneficiary of the scenario. You're part of the problem. So in our tradition, we always bring people that are true to type, erudite scholars for that matter, people that have earned their epaulets. Today I bring you my mentor. I call him my mentor because I defer to him on so many things. A fantastic man. He's true to type. And most of the things Nigeria has grappled with, he's always said it from as far as I can remember. Even I'm talking from the early 80s. So why people like him are not even at the state of affairs, I don't know. But we need to know where we're going, and we need to ask questions questions that need answers. Nigeria is just circumnavigating the same things every year. I'm told already that the budget for last year has not even been fully executed. Now we have the 2025 budget. We don't even understand what's in it, So how can we get out of this morass? Why are we making the same mistake all the time? So there's no other person than Professor Okedinachi Pat Utomi. Prof, welcome to Atlanta Discourse.
Thank you so much. Very happy New Year to you. I'm glad to join you.
Same to you, sir. So, Prof, it's still the same issue: poor leadership, poor organization, poor budgeting, zero discipline. I mean, it does look like we're all guilty, actually. At least maybe 99% of Nigerians are guilty. But the topic for today is how can Nigeria, what are the major impediments to our economic growth, So, I'm not going to put a time to this because I know you've written a lot about this, you've said a lot about, but people really need to know, and one of the reasons why we're picking this topic is that if there's anybody in Nigeria, for example, that is doing the wrong thing, if he hears from you now, maybe I don't know this, what I have to do, now I have to do. So, Prof, what are the major impediments to our growth economically in Nigeria?
Yeah, a starting point is to have clarity on how we want to grow, because there's no one way. Okay. Sometimes we get drawn in this direction, that direction, because we have not said to ourselves, this is how we want to travel. We run every which way that we are told we could travel. What even makes it worse is that we have all these people sitting in different parts of the world, whether it's Washington or here or there, who say to us, this is the way to go. Say, hey, we run that way. And somebody says, you people, we don't know what you run. We run. No, we need strategy. We need to be clear what can bring us growth. That is number one. The second is that we need to understand that there's some underpinning values that make things happen, no matter who is driving it. Those values have to be there. Third, we need to build consensus, elite consensus, around how we pursue certain things so that people are all, speaking from literally the same page and rowing in the same direction. Now, let me begin with a general mantra. You were asking who is responsible, who's the problem, and all of that. We all have a role. Now, as I probably have said before, in 1985, the Aga Khan Foundation sponsored a conference on development in Nairobi, in Kenya. That conference focused on what is referred to as a tripartite approach to development. The three partners, some of who are more effective than others in certain kinds of activity that add to progress. And these three partners are government, the public sector, the private sector, and the social enterprise sector. Back in those days, they were called PDAs, private development agencies, or the civil society sector. Now, there are some things that government cannot do well. Typically, wealth creation comes from the private sector. They say, government says it will create so many jobs. How does government create jobs? By hiring people to do civil service work. Yes, you can create some jobs that way, but that's just taking from one pocket and putting in another pocket. People will pay taxes and government can use that to hire people. But how do you get the taxes? People have to produce. And so that's private sector. So majorly, innovation, increasing production will come from private sector activity. And private sector activity looks to government for signaling. I mean, many years ago, I wrote a book, Why Nations Are Poor. And I tried to show, using Asian examples, how clarity in national strategy in Asia, for example, would lead corporate strategy to be something that is long-term. Whereas lack of clarity in national strategy will lead corporate strategy to try to be flexible so that they don't get caught in all kinds of wrong choices that may be made. And that long-term commitment, which then leads to certain kind of growth, will not be there because of that lack of clarity in national strategy. Then you have NGOs. There are certain things that they do much better than either of the other two sectors because of the nature of their own bottom line and the passion for service to people. I'll give you a classic example, education. I mean, government can provide education. Private sector can provide education. But NGOs tend to do a better job of it, as you can see from missionary schools and all that, because they would like to affect society in a particular way. If you had a school run by reverend fathers and reverend sisters, they are not looking to earn a lot of money. In fact, they just need to eat and sleep. And so the cost of that education is much lower than when you are paying people a lot of money to offer the same service that they are offering. So this cooperation between these three sectors, when there is clarity of strategy, can lead to faster growth and development. If we take that as a mantra of a tripartite approach to development, the next thing is some fundamental things that have affected progress in human history. To understand that if we don't pay attention to them, it doesn't matter how hard we try with policies, we're not going anywhere. If you look at all the literature on how some countries have done well and others have failed, whether it's from the work of historians, political scientists, economists, comes down to one thing, well, a few things, but one most important one, institutions. Institutions separate those who succeed from those who fail. So why are institutions weak and therefore not giving us the possibilities of the growth and development that strong institutions allow? Well, you got to understand how institutions evolve. Some of the best writing, thinking on this subject was offered by a man who won the Nobel Prize in economics many years ago, called Douglas North. His 1990 book, Institutions, Institutional Change and Economic Performance, is a classic in terms of understanding how institutions result in development. But interestingly, part of the prescription that Douglas North offers is that it is civil society, the horizontal linkages that lead interested parties to eventually see the evolution of boundaries to conduct that reduce uncertainty. And so institutions are critical. And civil society is a very important part of building institutions. The private sector and how they create business associations that ask for a level playing field are important components of strong institutions. The other thing that has been very fundamental in how progress has taken place in the world are values, culture. A colloquium at Harvard many years ago was based around the theme, how values shape human progress. Culture matters. So if we're going to work on all of this, we realize that character cannot be wished away. People will not get into trade transactions if they don't trust that you will behave appropriately. You know, the way that when you look, I saw a video of one of the gentlemen who invested millions and millions of dollars in the Lekki Beach corridor. And he was talking about how people were still sleeping in the hotels when they came to bulldoze the thing down. They were even struggling to save paintings on wall and stuff like that. Why is that necessary? Why is it not possible to say, we want to build this thing? Here's 3 months' notice. We must move out. This gentleman borrowed millions of US dollars to invest in this thing, had government approvals and whatever it is, and even if he didn't have any approval, to destroy value in that manner, when a few weeks' notice would have helped, seems to me a critical statement about values. And it shows why values matter. Because the next time you say to a foreigner who watches that video, come and invest in Nigeria, you say, their finest young men have borrowed billions and invested, and this is what happened to them. What will happen to us foreigner? You know, they will just wake up one morning and take our thing. So these things matter. Now, if we establish that we have to work on all of these things at the same time, specifics on how we can rebuild the economy then follow. And what are some specifics that we need to take in learning from what has happened everywhere around our world? I mean, it was in our very before, as we say in Nigerian English, in our very before that so-called Asian tigers rose from, nowhere. So what did they do? We all know what they did. It was in our very before that India went from being technically bankrupt in 1991, 3 weeks trading money with its foreign reserves, to a pitch now for the second biggest economy in the world. And the projections suggest that in a decade or so, it will be China, India, then the United States. So how did all of this happen? We know what happened, and we know how it can be implemented in Nigeria. But you need the discipline, you need the knowledge, you need the commitment, people who really care. Now, having said that, the strategy that I personally have been a proponent of is one that looks at our factor endowments. Every part of Nigeria is endowed. If it is Sokoto, you can look at Goma Arabic. You can look at what do you call this? Date palms and all of those chemical industries that can flow from that. If it is rivers, you can look at hydrocarbon value chains. Look at the North Central mineral deposits and agricultural produce that can come from those places. I was in Nigeria for Christmas. I just got back. I had the privilege of visiting several governors during that short period I was in Nigeria. Amongst them, governors of Nasarawa and Benue. Between those two states alone, the kind of agricultural and mineral endowments that they have is enough to power the entire Nigerian zone. Just add Niger to them and the vast acreages of land available in Niger. I give you an example of two things that I'm pushing right now in Nigeria, to just give you an example. We're the biggest producers of cassava in the world, but we don't earn anything from cassava except filling our stomachs in some places. Can you imagine that you took the latest top quality seed multiplication ways and you put 30, 40, 50,000 hectares to major cultivation, we will produce enough cassava, just cassava, to provide gari for all of us to fill our stomachs on the one hand, provide ethanol, provide starch for pharmaceutical industry, and a boost to manufacturing that will happen from all of that. Just taking the cassava value chain alone, we can change Nigeria. But because we're lazy and we wait for those pittance that comes from oil to share amongst the big men, we are missing out where the real wealth of our country is. So if you take the cassava value chain and take sesame seed value chain, all just from North Central, you will take care of Nigeria. Everybody has a middle-class lifestyle. Not to talk of if you do it all around Nigeria. So I've taken to persuading people, business people, to go into those areas and to find ways of working with the government to ensure that there's enough security, because this security thing that has become mission impossible. Look, it's an easy thing to fix. I don't want to sound like people are dealing with security issues around the world. Small technologies, small things like drone technology, this, that, create a forest ranger service and you protect the farms, people move in. We say food security is important for economic growth because people who are hungry will cause problem. Why is there no food? Oh, they say header farmer clash. You recruit hundreds of thousands of these people into a green army, if you want to call them that. And their business is to protect those places. Say, okay, to reduce inflation rapidly, because a major part of inflation is food price inflation. These new 2 million recruits that you begin to train, first of all, even giving 2 million people jobs is a huge impact. Then you train them to protect the agricultural fields and say legumes, 3 months, the thing has grown. So we go into legumes production in this protected area with farm management teams, almost in a manner similar to what President Obasanjo did with Operation Feed the Nation, but this time commercially for the farmers. You will just dramatically reduce the problem of inflation and food insecurity and all of that at the same time. Now, if you then do that, you have to look at the value chains of those agricultural produce and the mineral outputs. Look, if you look at the Nasarawa Benue Basin alone and the minerals in them, we're talking already. The Nasarawa government has investors from Asia who are doing lithium. If we go up the lithium value chain alone, what this will mean in foreign exchange income for Nigeria, we can't even begin to talk about. But the fact that we are not focusing and doing the right things just keeps us in poverty.
Quick interjection. What is affecting that focus? Why do we lack the focus? There are too many educated Nigerians, everywhere you go, America, Asia. Why do we lack focus? Why is it so difficult to sit down and chart a course?
It's not capacity to think. Uh, there is what is called the knowing doing gap. And the knowing doing gap is created partly by personal human courage. And in the case of Nigeria, where Nigerians are doing well everywhere, but not in Nigeria, part of it is the politics of Nigeria. And you can't run away from it. I'm trying to avoid running into discussion of politics in this economic discussion, but you can't run away from it. What happened in Nigeria? Look, economics is the science of incentives. Back in those days, we used to have conversations. The late Professor Elebute would tell us that when he was appointed professor of medicine at the University of Lagos in the 60s, his salary was immediately higher than that of the prime minister as a professor of medicine. Share with you, my wife is a professor of medicine in that same University of Lagos. When I was home during the Christmas holiday, our electricity, we are band A, as they call it, we're spending 30,000 naira a day.
Wow.
Well, 30,000, I'm not joking. And this is not all we need, though. This is just the one that NEPA, or whatever they call them these days, Eco Disco, supply us for less than half the time. Less than half. We're paying 30,000 naira a day.
That's 1 million a month.
I'm coming to my wife as professor of medicine, earns half of that a month. So half of that for half of her light, because we then have to put the light of the generator, and this is so. But what is even more, interesting is that some character who managed to go and steal ballot boxes did not invest anything in improving his life. Is now, by courtesy of some, I don't know, godfather, a member of the National Assembly, he's pocketing 50, 60, 70, I don't know how many millions. So that professor of medicine who looks at the environment decides I should probably move to America. And he or she moves, and you think of it as, one person. You suddenly have a situation where the country is run by the most incompetent. That's called a kakistocracy. So when we are in a kakistocracy, incentives are so warped that there isn't an encouragement to produce. And so those who could produce just watch, while those who are sharing money are sharing. So,
or they join them.
or they join them. And so the possibilities that are greater are then forgone for this strange self-driven thing.
But Prof, quickly, sorry, sir. Another quick interjection. I remember during the June 12 issue, you and your friends came out with concerned professionals, and I'm old enough to remember that. Concerned professional was the body that led to NADECO and so many of the opposition movements, a lot of, we still have some of those bodies, but they're not functioning. There's no opposition today. It's like everybody has joined the, you can't beat them, join them. Why? Is it that we're just inherently dishonest, or everybody has resigned to faith? Because one reason why I'm talking to you today, that it looks like there's no hope. It looks like the kind of news we hear. Where is everybody? Where are the concerned profession?
What I shock people. I have this mantra that became my ringtone for many years. Nigeria will rise up again. God will heal our land, restore us anew. Nigeria will rise up again. I am actually very positive on the future of Nigeria. Everybody you talk to in Nigeria these days says to you there was a country. It's like the people who are in power are just grabbing their final rush before the thing goes down, the ship, the Titanic goes down. That's the general mindset.
Yeah,
but it is not true. Nigeria is going to be an extraordinarily great country that will meet its promise. However, we're going through a phase where people are wondering, is this whole thing worth it? I can assure them that it is worth it. If you think deeply enough about the future of your children. But history shows us that many countries have gone through phases like this, because some never came back out. They just collapsed completely. If you read Jared Diamond and Collapse about how nations choose to succeed or fail, you will get a sense for what the possibilities can be. But I have a very, I don't know, a strange sense of optimism that these fellows, it's not just that they burn themselves out, but that a diaspora movement will turn Nigeria around. I saw it happen in many ways to Japan, India, and China. And I think it will happen to Nigeria. There are failures, weaknesses in leadership that has prevented a clear thinking elite. And part of something I take personal blame for, 1998, 99, if we had realized that it would be as bad when some people in the concerned professionals were saying we must grab hold of this country and set the direction that we have preached, we wouldn't have said, oh, no, we're not politicians, we are businessmen and professionals. However, having made that mistake, I think that there is a point where a group of mea culpa people, because people realize what has happened to Nigeria, they know, they can see it. When people will say, look, enough, and then things can turn around. I believe so. I think that even in the middle of all of these terrible things happening, I see trends. If you look at what global economics, look at, there's a professor at Harvard called Robert Z. Lawrence. He's just written a book, Behind the Curve, and it looks at trends and how manufacturing has peaked in the United States, whether politicians like it or not, or introduce tariffs, do this, do that. The nature of the trend is such that it has peaked. It's even trying to peak in China. The future factory of the world is Africa. And all we have to do is a few things. But then again, you turn to this lady, Irene Sun, who was written a Chinese woman who's at McKinsey, has written this book on Africa as the world's next factory. We're going to see, I have met with a flow of Asian investors in manufacturing, very anxious to invest in Nigeria. They worry about this and that and that. After all our politics, I managed to sit down with the system. I sit down with them and say, Nigeria is the future. Move, go in. I can tell you that I traveled with a group of Taiwanese and Chinese investors during this Christmas period to various states in the south and in the north. And I have a significant commitment from several of them that they will invest. So we're going to see this Nigerian thing turn around. And once we begin to see better leadership, you will see how Nigeria will blow up in the right direction.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, you have so much hope on the Nigeria diaspora contingent. You know, why do you have so much hope? Because they've always been there. I mean, what do you see that is different now? What's different?
If you look at the pattern of the globe's evolution, whether we like it or not, Africa is coming to a new place in global economics, given its resources, given a better understanding of its endowments, and a more enlightened diaspora. You will see that just like Americans are working on the Lobito corridor, the stretch from the port of Lobito in Angola through Zambia and all that. People who are clever are seeing that the stretch from Dakar through Lagos to Aba Port Harcourt will probably be the fastest growing industrializing part of the planet in a few years. And who can better understand and take advantage of that place than those who were born there, the diaspora. So the diaspora, out of both patriotism, but more importantly, self-interest, will see that they are the ones likely to profit the more from a Dakar-Lagos-Aba corridor that becomes the super factory megalopolis of the world in the next 20, 25 years. The diaspora will be rushing back to make their investments. And we see the way it has happened for India. And so I read the trends that way.
Okay, no problem, sir. Yeah, Ghana just got a new president, John Dramani Mahama. They had also a fantastic election. The ease of succession was extraordinary. I mean, I have to confess, I'm jealous. You know, and from the times Rawlings became a democratically elected leader till date, I've seen opposition win incumbent authorities back to back in Ghana seamlessly.
Yep.
It's almost, apart from the name Ghana, you probably look like maybe you're in Europe or North America the way it's been going, and the maturity in Bahemia, quickly congratulating Mahama even before the final count came out, was extraordinary. When will we get there in Nigeria? How can we get there? Because it does look like one of the major, factors we're battling with is free and fair election. And it's going to get worse, bearing any major changes. It's really going to get worse. How do we get out of that? Nobody is going to respect us if our leaders are not the choices of the people. I know you don't really we want to do economics, but this really matters going forward.
Yeah, no question about that. Economics won't go anywhere unless we get this one right. And I think that's where the emphasis should be. Diaspora energy, local energy. Let's get elections that confer legitimacy going in Nigeria. If we can't get that done, the promise of Nigeria will just pass us by. We should begin now the massive pressure from home and abroad to make sure that we get free and fair elections. We need the re-education of people about the effects of having a true democracy. Look, the Nobel Prize in Economics was won last year by James Robinson and his colleagues Acemoglu and then Johnson. And the day that the prize was announced, James Robinson was being interviewed on CNN. And I recall he saying that, their work, of course, the peak of their work is why nations fail. One of the things that it tells us all is that development is an intensely political process. So until we can recognize that our politics is key to development, we're going to be in serious trouble. And I think that reality is going to be dawning on many Nigerians, and effort will go more to ensuring that we have a system that works. I mean, we do have a serious problem in that we have already created a political class that does not believe in democracy. Once you can grab power, you think it's okay. But you know what? If poverty continues, we're going to have a bloody revolution in Nigeria. Because you can't get one scoundrel who we know is just a common criminal become senator and drive past you in a Siska motorcade.
And you are hungry.
And you're hungry.
A PhD holder.
Yeah, nonsense is enough. No life.
Oh, God.
Like this. And you organize to go and drag him out of his house and beat him up one night, no matter how many soldiers policemen he has there. So these realities will force us into doing the right thing very soon.
You know why I was saying that? Because you compare us with India a lot. I also do. But, if you look at the history of India, I mean, especially when Indira Gandhi was assassinated, in 90% of
Right, Gandhi.
Indira Gandhi, yeah, Indira, when she was assassinated, Rajiv, yeah, I'm still going to that. I wanted to start with the mother.
Okay.
That when Indira was assassinated, that's a recipe for coup in any sub-Saharan country at that time. And the son came in, he also was assassinated. That's also automatic recipe for coup. So India, volatile democracy, largest democracy, multi-ethnic, multi-religious. There's no record of a military coup in India, despite all those diversities. As a matter of fact, if you look at Mahatma Gandhi, the founding father, he was a poor man, very Spartan and all that. So when you compare us with India, I like the trajectory of India. It's different from ours. Why do you think we should look at India as a yardstick? Because in our way, our founding fathers, even though they seem better than the people we have now, we're also wealthy people. It's looking every day that they all picked a couple or two.
Don't. Again, it comes back to my point about values shaping progress. India went the way that it has gone because people like Mahatma Gandhi were willing to sacrifice a lot to create a system of values that enable nation building. You say Gandhi was a poor man. He wasn't a poor man, actually. Gandhi was a well-heeled lawyer.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well-heeled lawyer who got radicalized when traveling in South Africa as a lawyer, a significant big man, was thrown out of a coach for white people. So he then began to rethink things and came through the importance of values, and without a gun, led a revolution that chased the British out of India through non-violence. So his sacrifice took him to the image of Gandhi that of that poor man wearing that sari or whatever it is, But he was a very successful lawyer. That's where he started life. And this is really what people like us try to point to with things like the new tribe. Can we liberate these educated people who are trying to protect their small patch of survival to realize that we are a people of Ubuntu? That's who we are as Africans. I am because we are. Until our values can begin to return to the common good, the collective over the individual, we're going to struggle. And the few that seem to have taken advantage of the rest of us will find that it's not sustainable. Eventually, they drown in their own vomit. Because, today you take advantage of this person, that person. Tomorrow somebody else takes advantage of you. And it's a jungle. So, India has managed to travel the way it has traveled because of those values. We need to build a more values-driven society. Right now, leadership is about how scoundrels push their ways through in our country, and that's not a sustainable thing. Again, I referred to Jared Diamond earlier. With the point that he makes very clearly in Collapse is that is how societies have failed through human history, their values. So if Nigeria's values persist, then Nigeria will fail and fail dramatically. But if we find leadership, people who recognize that values matter, who then sacrifice themselves like Gandhi did, and went from being this upper crust lawyer to being this man that goes around almost like a beggar to mobilize the people. Then, that's what we need to do in Nigeria. Get some of you who are living in your comfort zones to shed those comfort zones for the people. Ubuntu. I am because we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about New Tribe. I mean, it's catching. There's a lot of traction. We can say I follow it. I believe in it. I radiate it every day. And so, how's it been like? Are you getting the type of response
I tell you,
you?
I'm in the middle of a lot of excitement. In fact, if we don't finish this conversation in the next 10 minutes, I'll be running into a problem with another Zoom around that. Why? Uh, a group of Nigerians who are active in British politics have been looking at how they can impact Nigeria for good. Some of them elected officials in Britain. I don't want to mention names now, but and they have said to themselves, like, part of the problem in Nigeria is that we're not having serious, rational conversation. So what Nigeria needs, some think tanks that can stimulate serious understanding of the problems of Nigeria, research, advocacy, bring people to a consciousness of why we are where we are. But they wanted to begin with education, setting curriculum, creating curriculum for schools that would lead to a regeneration of the Nigerian away from these values or non-values, if you want to call them, that keep us down. And they contacted me to see how they can cooperate with the education cohort of the New Tribe to achieve these goals. And we have a meeting on Zoom in a few minutes to advance that conversation. So I am excited to see what the healthcare cohort is doing. Dr. Latidoye, Dr. Achomero,
Adisa.
Adisa.
Yeah.
Adisa was home this Christmas, I believe, looking at EMS, emergency medical services in Nigeria. Then you see what now the education cohort is doing. You look at the policy cohort. It's really very exciting to see the traction that we're getting out of the New Tribe.
Interesting. So I'll ask you one more question because I don't want you to miss that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you during Christmas, you said you met a lot of governors and all that. What's their take? Do they see things to be as bad as it is? Because most of them I see on TV, they look comfortable. There was almost no governor that didn't throw a Christmas party and was dancing, and there's so much allure and grandeur in Nigeria. From the government side. It's not a reflection of what is happening with the masses. What do you see? What did you tell them?
I don't know if it is me, but when they are with me, they focus on problem solving. What can you? I was particularly impressed with one or two of the governors that I met. All of them, came very hungry to see what new ideas can move things forward. It was also nice that I came with groups of Chinese potential investors in many of those places. But I tell you, one of the governors met privately with me, not all with all the investors and all of that, but in his office, just one-on-one. And I was incredibly impressed by the fact that he brought out a notebook. As I was talking, he was making notes, like a classroom.
Wow.
And I said, okay, people are getting serious. People are getting serious. So we pray to God that that kind of trend continues. Yes, so maybe the party in some instances, but generally with me, they focus.
That's sober. That's sober.
I don't know why.
Oh God, yeah, I know you hit it. You hit the nail on the head, and you give them the figures, their figures, and it's unfortunate, but I'm optimistic too. I wasn't optimistic 3 4 months, but I do think that nothing lasts forever. Change is a constant and something we give eventually. So, Prof, thank you so much for your time. I mean, you're running a tight and very busy schedule. So, to all our viewers, let's thank Prof once again. He's always hitting our call at the shortest notice. Prof, thank you so much for your patriotism. We respect what you do. We appreciate you. And any initiative that you want, we will always support you from Atlanta Discuss. So this is 7 continents. Thank you. It's going to be a wrap there. I'm sure you all know already that we have atlanticdigest.com. There, just go there, Atlantic Digest. That's our online newspaper, atlanticdigest.com, 24 hours news. Prof, thank you. Thank you, everybody. See you next week. Bye.
Best.